On the late afternoon of November 17th, 2004, the peaceful city of Nara, Japan was shrouded in darkness when a man named Shigeki Ariyama, 30 years old, walked home after a tiring day at work. Instead of being greeted by the usual cheerful laughter, he was met by his wife Kyoriki Ariyama's trembling, desperate voice. Her broken words delivered painful news. Their 7-year-old daughter, Kaoru, had disappeared without a trace. It all began that Wednesday afternoon. At 1:30 p.m., little Kaoru had finished school at Tomio North Elementary as usual and was walking the familiar path home. 10 minutes later, Kyoriki called to check on her daughter. Kaoru's clear voice rang out on the other end. "I'm on my way home, Mom." Those were the last words the mother would hear from her beloved child. Time passed minute by minute, but the familiar small figure never appeared. More than 10 minutes, the normal time to get home, became 20 minutes, then 30 minutes. When the clock showed past 2 p.m., the mother's anxiety could no longer be contained. Kyoriki dialed her daughter's number again. But this time, instead of Kaoru's sweet voice, there was only the steady beeping. The phone had been turned off. Around 2:30 p.m., a glimmer of hope emerged when Kaoru's phone suddenly came back online. The location signal showed the device was at a nearby park. But the joy was short-lived when Kyoriki realized that although the phone was on, she still couldn't connect with her daughter. The phone rang endlessly in the void with no one answering. At this point, cold sweat began to break out on the mother's forehead, and her sense of unease grew stronger. Unable to sit still and wait, Kyoriki rushed outside, calling for help from neighbors to search together along the route Kaoru usually took every day. They searched every street corner, every tree, following every possible small footstep of the child. The search extended all the way to the school, where teachers with worried faces confirmed they had not seen Kaoru return after dismissal. By after 6 p.m., Kyoriki was exhausted after searching everywhere her daughter might have gone, from familiar candy shops to favorite playgrounds, from small alleys to public parks. But that small figure seemed to have vanished into thin air. At 6:45 p.m., with heavy hearts and trembling legs, the Shigeki couple finally had to make the most painful decision: report their daughter's disappearance to the Nara West police station. While Shigeki tried to stay calm to comfort his wife, who was drowning in despair, he continued searching with the faint hope that perhaps Kaoru was just somewhere playing and losing track of time, and would soon run home. But just over an hour later, at 8:04 p.m., the phone rang in the house that was sinking into gloom. Kyoriki, with eyes swollen from crying, saw her daughter's name appear on the screen, a final glimmer of hope in the darkness. But when she opened the message, the world collapsed before her eyes. It wasn't the cheerful laughter or innocent apology she expected. Instead, it was a horrific photo and a cold message. In the blurry frame, an image of Kaoru lying motionless on the floor of a strange room, her small body uncovered, in a bizarre position that made it impossible to know whether she was alive or dead. And then, the cruel words that cut into the mother's heart like knives. "Your daughter has been received." Kyoriki's anguished scream pierced the quiet atmosphere. Shigeki rushed over, and when he saw what was on the screen, rage erupted like hellfire. He grabbed the phone, his trembling fingers dialing back at lightning speed. The steady beeping of the phone was like hammer blows to his head, each passing second a torture. "You bastard!" Shigeki screamed into the phone, his voice full of desperation and fury. "Whatever money you want, I can give you. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Just don't hurt my child." The painful pleas echoed into the dark night, but only silence answered. 4 hours passed like a century for the Ariyama family. At exactly 12:05 a.m., a call from the police broke the desperate silence. Someone had discovered the body of a child in a drainage ditch on the side of a Gemidai road in Higuri town, about 6 miles from their home. Shigeki's heart seemed to stop when he heard this news, but he still held his trembling wife tightly and quickly went to the scene with the police team. Under the cold headlights of the police car, the scene that appeared before their eyes was like an unbelievable nightmare. In the shallow water ditch by the roadside, a small figure lay face down, her face toward the murky water. A cream-colored shirt, soaked through, was the only thing covering her body, her bare feet purple from the cold of the late night. It was Kaoru. When the police carefully lifted the child up, they discovered her small body had become completely rigid. But the most horrifying thing, which made even the most experienced police officers shudder, was when they saw Kaoru's face. Her teeth had almost all fallen out. What evil had happened to this innocent child? The crime scene examination revealed more painful mysteries. On Kaoru's clothes, forensic experts discovered two completely different types of hair, strands that did not belong to her. Both samples were immediately sent for DNA testing. Kaoru, with a choked voice, recalled that morning, Kaoru had happily worn her backpack, carried her phone, wore shoes and a warm sweater. But now, all those things had vanished without a trace. The autopsy report later revealed that before her death, Kaoru had endured horrific abuse. The cause of death was determined to be drowning, but there was no dirty water from the drainage ditch in her lungs, but rather relatively clean tap water. This could only mean that this place was just where the perpetrator dumped the body, not the actual scene of the horrific crime. At dawn on November 18th, the Nara West Police Station immediately established a special investigation team determined to track down the perpetrator of this heinous crime. The first question that arose in the investigators' minds: who could have a reason to harm an innocent child with such brutal methods? Could this be a revenge killing? The police started with this hypothesis but quickly hit a dead end. Shigeki and Kaoru, with eyes swollen from grief, tried to remember every face, every person they had ever known. Their family had always lived harmoniously and properly, never leaving deep hatred with anyone. Even at school, teachers confirmed that Kaoru was a well-behaved, gentle child who had never had conflicts or troubled anyone. If it wasn't someone they knew who committed the crime, then the investigation would become many times more complex and difficult. Undaunted, the investigation team quickly deployed a meticulous trace operation. They collected every frame of footage from surveillance cameras along the route Kaoru usually took to school, while conducting interviews with every household living near that area. And then, like a ray of light in the darkness, they discovered the first clue. The footage showed that on the afternoon of the 17th, a car had approached where Kaoru was walking. Not long after, blurry images showed the child had gotten into the car. But due to the camera being quite far away and poor image quality, even determining the color of the car became a major challenge for the investigators. Fortunately, 2 elementary school students became valuable witnesses. They confirmed they had seen the car that day. Kaoru got into a white car, they stated. This testimony was reinforced by a parent of a student who also witnessed a girl resembling Kaoru getting into a white car that fateful afternoon. However, the investigation quickly encountered its first trouble when contradictory information began to emerge. Right after identifying the clue about the white car, police received completely opposite testimonies. Some other witnesses insisted they had seen the suspect driving a black or dark blue sedan. This contradiction gave the investigation team a headache. After many meetings based on the number of witnesses and the reliability of testimonies, police decided to bet on the white car having higher authenticity. They concentrated all resources on tracking suspicious white cars in the area. A large-scale manhunt was immediately deployed. Dozens of police were stationed throughout the surrounding area, setting up checkpoints to inspect every passing vehicle. The interrogations lasted from morning to night, from one day to the next, but a week passed in vain. Despite mobilizing up to 170 police officers, the investigation remained shrouded in thick fog. Each passing day, hope of finding the perpetrator grew dimmer, and pressure from public opinion as well as the victim's family continued to increase. Were they going in the wrong direction from the beginning? This question began to creep into the investigators' minds when a few days later, DNA test results from the 2 hair strands on Kaoru's clothes were announced. The report showed one hair belonged to blood type B, the other to blood type AB, neither belonging to Kaoru. This discovery was like a new ray of light, leading police to hypothesize that there might not be one, but 2 perpetrators, living together and committing the crime together. With this new hypothesis, the investigation was expanded in another direction. But week after week, month after month, Despite continuously expanding the search scope and changing tactics, they still achieved no results. During that time, the case swept across Japan like an information storm. Media outlets reported continuously, from morning news to late-night current affairs programs. Images of Kaoru's innocent face appeared everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, and on missing person posters plastered on street corners. The city of Nara, once peaceful, was suddenly plunged into an atmosphere of panic and fear. Parents began changing their daily routines. They escorted their children more closely, no longer letting them walk to school alone as before. Everyone wondered, was the perpetrator still hiding somewhere in the city? Not stopping at just reporting news, psychology and criminology experts also began to speak out with analysis. They worked together to profile the psychological portrait of the suspect based on the behaviors exhibited. One detail particularly attracted attention. The perpetrator kidnapped Kaoru but never made any ransom demands, and ultimately murdered her brutally. Experts determined this was very likely a pedophile, criminals for whom killing or abusing a child was called claiming a life. The cold message, "Your daughter has been received," was clear evidence of this assessment. But as the investigation dragged on without any breakthrough results, public attention gradually subsided. Media outlets also shifted focus to other events. After a month, despite police and Kaoru's parents having exhausted all methods and tried every possible direction of investigation, the Ariyama family sank into deep despair, while police also began to feel at an impasse. But then, like a bolt of lightning, on December 14th, Kyuriki's phone rang again. This time, the sender was still Kaoru's phone. The mother's heart pounded as she opened the message, only to fall into hell once again. Short but malicious lines appeared. "The little sister is next." And this time, accompanied by more photos of Kaoru, images that no parent could bear to see. The provocative, malicious message was like a raging wave of indignation throughout the entire Nara West police station. The stern faces of the investigators erupted in fury, determined not to let the perpetrator continue mocking justice. Technical experts were quickly mobilized to analyze the phone signal. From data from signal towers, they mapped out the perpetrator's activity pattern. The first message was sent from an area near Higuri-Odo town. The second message originated from near Koriyama and Kamamaki towns. This was an important clue to narrow down the search area. A large-scale investigation was deployed with unprecedented urgency. Hundreds of police were divided into small groups, conducting meticulous house-to-house interviews in the area. They persistently inquired, searching for any clue, however small, that could lead to the perpetrator. And then, as a reward for persistence, at a small snack shop in the area, they found an important breakthrough. The shop owner, a middle-aged man with a worried face, recalled a strange detail that had left a deep impression on him. "A few days ago, there was a very strange customer," he told them with a trembling voice. "He kept bragging about a photo on his phone, saying he downloaded it from the internet. But I saw it was an image of a little girl, a girl without clothes looking very pitiful. I felt uncomfortable but didn't dare say anything." The shop owner continued. "He kept attracting other customers to look, as if he was proud of something disgusting. I remember clearly because the scene was so horrible. And that person is a regular customer here named Kaoru Kobayashi." This information struck the police like lightning. An important question arose. On media outlets or the internet, all images of Kaoru were normal photos. So how could Kaoru have photos that only the perpetrator could have taken? The terrifying answer gradually became clear in each police officer's mind. They had very likely found the murderer. Without a second's hesitation, the investigation team immediately deployed a comprehensive trace of Kobayashi Kaoru. Kaoru worked as a newspaper delivery person for a local newspaper in Nara County. When the investigation team went to the newspaper office to verify, a suspicious fact was revealed. November 17th, the exact day Kaoru disappeared, was a Wednesday, and Kaoru had requested time off work. This coincidence was too suspicious to ignore. Was this just a coincidence or a carefully calculated plan? A detailed investigation into Kaoru's activities on that fateful day continued to increase suspicion. Throughout that afternoon, exactly when Kere disappeared, Kaoru had no alibi. He wasn't at work. No one witnessed him at any other specific location. When police dug deeper into Kaoru's past, the picture of this person became increasingly dark. His criminal record showed he had previous cases involving fraud and harassment. These behaviors, combined with his character and opportunity to commit the crime, made Kaoru the #1 suspect in the investigators' eyes. On December 30th, after carefully considering all evidence collected, police made the decision to arrest Kaoru. They prepared mentally for a raid that could reveal horrific truths. But nothing could prepare them for what they were about to witness. When Kaoru's door opened, even the most experienced police officers were severely shocked. The small house was like a museum of crime. They discovered Carrie's phone with her favorite pink case, her small shoes, the warm sweater Kyoriki had dressed her in that morning, her backpack full of notebooks and pencils, and even her school lunch bag clearly marked Kere in her mother's careful handwriting. Everything was scattered carelessly, but even more horrifying was yet to come. As they continued searching, police discovered a collection of nearly 100 videotapes and about 50 magazines. When they checked the content, they realized these were almost entirely pedophile materials. Opening Kaoru's wardrobe, police discovered it was filled with girls' underwear, nearly 100 sets hanging inside. In a prominent place in the wardrobe was a human-shaped doll wearing a blue school swimsuit on the outside, but filled with girls' underwear inside. This was simply the house of a demon. Faced with irrefutable evidence laid out before him, Kobayashi Kaoru finally could not continue denying his crimes. With a frighteningly cold expression, he began confessing the complete truth about the horrific crime he had committed. On November 17th, after requesting time off work, Kaoru had borrowed an old green Toyota Corolla from a friend, an important detail explaining why the initial investigation hit a dead end. Due to the distance and poor camera quality, police couldn't accurately determine the car's color. Moreover, the testimony of 2 elementary students about a white car had inadvertently led the investigation astray, allowing Kaoru's green Toyota to completely escape suspicion. Initially, the discovery of 2 different types of hair on Carrie's clothes led police to believe there were 2 perpetrators. But the truth was that Kaoru lived completely alone. The second hair could have stuck to Carrie's clothes when he dragged the body to the car, or from dirty items in his car. At 10 a.m. on the day of the crime, Kaoru set out from his residence in Sango Town, Nara County, with an evil purpose. He drove to Taishido, Yao City, Osaka Prefecture, where he thought it would be easy to find a suitable target. For 2 full hours, he wandered looking for isolated, vulnerable children, but he found no opportunities. Around 1 p.m., disappointed at not achieving his goal, Kaoru returned to Nara for lunch. After the meal, he continued his malicious hunt in the city. And then, fate had arranged. He encountered little Kere walking alone on the road. At that moment, Kere was calling her mother Kyoriki, reporting that she was on her way home. That clear, innocent voice, instead of arousing compassion, triggered Kaoru's predatory instincts. Seeing a small child walking alone, dark intentions immediately arose in his head. Kaoru quickly turned his car around, following Carrie with sweet lies. "Uncle is going in the same direction. Get in the car, I'll give you a ride." Those were the last words Kere heard from the outside world before stepping into hell. After little Kere got in the car, Kaoru made excuses saying he needed to go home to help his father get something, needed to make a quick stop first. Little Carrie thought Kaoru was such a helpful person and agreed. When they arrived at Kaoru's house, he continued using lies to keep the child there. "Wait here for Uncle a moment. I need to prepare some things," he said. Carrie obediently sat down at the table and took out her math homework. While Carrie was concentrating on her homework, Kaoru began committing depraved acts. He took advantage and touched the child's body all over, exploiting Carrie's innocence and trust. The pure child understood nothing about what was happening, still focused on her homework. But time passed, and the clock on the wall showed past 2 p.m. A well-behaved child's instinct to go home began to awaken. The little girl wanted to go home. At this point, Kaoru fell into a fierce psychological battle. On one hand, he still hadn't satisfied his sick desires and didn't want to let Care leave. On the other hand, he feared that if he let her go home, Care might tell her parents what had happened, and the consequences would be unpredictable. In that fateful moment, Kaoru made the cruel decision that would change everything. He decided to go all the way, a haunting phrase in his confession. With a voice still pretending to care, Kaoru made an excuse that Care's hands and knees were dirty and led the little girl to the bathroom to bathe her. After the bath, Care innocently boasted to Kaoru that she could hold her breath underwater for a very long time. Her eyes lit up when telling him this, not knowing that those innocent words would become a painful prophecy for her own fate. Kaoru, with hands trembling from sick desire, could not control his evil instincts. When he began committing depraved acts, the pain made Care cry out. Fearing neighbors would hear, he used all his strength to push Care's head and back underwater, ignoring the child's desperate struggling. 5 minutes passed. Gradually, the sounds in the bathtub quieted down. The child's final movements also stopped completely. When Kaoru finally let go, an innocent life had been taken. Faced with the scene he had just created, even a perpetrator like Kaoru was paralyzed with panic. But the first thing that appeared in his mind wasn't remorse or grief, but calculating how to escape police pursuit. With disgusting cunning, Kaoru quickly got dressed and ran to his workplace, deliberately creating some commotion to attract attention. Then he went to a familiar restaurant for dinner, greeting staff normally. All of this was aimed at creating a false alibi, to make everyone think he had appeared normally that afternoon as usual. When night fell and he returned to the house containing the crime, evil ideas once again arose in Kaoru's sick mind. But by this time, Care's small body had become rigid, no longer as he desired. In frustration and anger, Kaoru took out a hammer and one by one smashed Care's small white teeth. This was exactly why when she was found, her teeth had almost all fallen out. At 8 p.m., Kaoru performed the final act in his chain of horrific crimes. He coldly photographed Care's body and sent it to Kyoriki, not for ransom money, not for any other purpose, but simply to satisfy his sick craving to see others' pain. When investigators asked the reason for this cruel action, Kaoru replied with no emotion in his voice. "I just wanted to let them know the result." One can imagine the scene at the other end of the phone. Shigeki and Kyoriki, two parents in desperate search for their daughter, suddenly received the most horrific image any parent could witness. Their hearts fell into an abyss. Their world collapsed before their eyes. Meanwhile, at the other end, Kaoru was probably smiling with satisfaction, imagining their faces of pain and fury. At 9:40 p.m., Kaoru dressed Kairi in clothes and carried the body to his car. He drove to the suburbs and threw her into a roadside drainage ditch. That was the final act sealing this horrific crime. In the following days, Kaoru was like an emotionless observer, watching television news about the investigation every night. He even found it amusing to see police running around without finding clues. The suffering of the Ariyama family, the community's panic, all became sources of sick entertainment for him. But when the heat of the case gradually cooled down, when media outlets shifted to reporting other events, Kaoru suddenly felt he had lost his fun. He craved attention to the point that on December 14th, he sent another threatening message to heat up the case again. He even proactively showed off those horrific photos in the snack shop, deliberately attracting attention from those around him. These behaviors all showed that Kaoru was someone extremely craving attention. He wanted to become the center of all attention, whether negative or positive. In prison, when his lawyer asked about the most painful experience in his life, Kaoru's answer revealed part of the motivation driving his criminal behavior. Being completely ignored by the whole class. I felt like I didn't exist in this world, had nothing at all. After such a brutal perpetrator was caught, major Japanese media outlets all reported and followed up, wanting to uncover Kaoru's motivation for the crime. These cases also became landmark cases in Japan, debating whether the perpetrator should receive the death penalty for a murder without premeditation and with only one victim. Surprisingly, on April 18, 2005, at the first trial, Kaoru completely refused to defend himself, even proactively requesting the court sentence him to death. But he still wouldn't reveal his motivation for killing little Kaoru, refused to apologize to the child's parents, showed no remorse. Such abnormal behavior also made people even more curious about why he harmed an innocent little girl. Kaoru was born in November 1968 in Osaka Prefecture. Later, his parents had 2 more children. Normally, Kaoru's father liked to drink to intoxication, using violence to solve problems. When there were problems at home, as the eldest son, Kaoru would become the target for his father's anger. At school, because Kaoru's left eye was weak and he had to squint to see people clearly, he was also isolated and mocked by classmates. Being pushed away by society from all sides, Kaoru had developed bad habits since 2nd grade, beginning to steal from stores. In Kaoru's childhood, only his mother could give him some comfort. But unfortunately, when Kaoru was in 4th grade, his mother died, giving birth to their 3rd child. From then on, Kaoru became even more isolated. Under his father's violent education, stealing and smoking became more frequent. In middle school, Kaoru was kicked out by his father to work part-time to earn money. Initially, his job was newspaper delivery, earning 70,000 yen per month, but having to give his father 50,000 yen. During high school, Kaoru and some other thieves and robbers often hung out together, eating, drinking, engaging in pornography and gambling. In 11th grade, from watching related videos, he began developing evil ideas about little girls, which he couldn't control from then on. During school, Kaoru had been arrested for theft. After graduation, at 21, Kaoru worked at a newspaper stand, but was sentenced to 2 years for threatening 2 girls, though it was a suspended sentence. Who would have thought that just over a year later, at 22, Kaoru committed another crime, harming a girl and being prosecuted for rape. The previous suspended sentence was revoked, and Kaoru served 4 years in prison. Upon release, Kaoru was kicked out of his home. From then on, he worked at various newspapers, mainly all delivery jobs, until November 17, 2004, when Kaoru spent his day off looking for little girls. After going around Osaka and not finding a suitable isolated girl, when he returned to Nara, he targeted little Kaoru. In these 10-plus years, no one knows how many other little girls Kaoru harmed. After the first trial in 2005, medical examination revealed Kaoru suffered from antisocial personality disorder and pedophilia, forcing the trial to be postponed. In the first 6 trials, Kaoru showed no remorse, completely acting as if the matter had nothing to do with him. At the 6th trial on March 27, 2006, he directly expressed, "The trial repeating over and over is just a farce. What I've always wanted is the death penalty." A clinical psychologist present at the trial analyzed that perhaps his upbringing made him develop hostility toward society, believing he was the real victim. In a situation with no one to rely on, he wanted to use death to escape painful reality. On September 26, 2006, the judges concluded that Kaoru had no capacity for reform and sentenced him to death. Kaoru, sitting in the defendant's chair hearing the verdict, only clenched his fists and grinned widely. Regarding Kaoru's motivation for the crime, some believe it may have been because Kaoru's mother died when he was young, plus his subsequent life never went as desired, making him particularly miss that mother-child relationship. When he saw little Carrie calling her mother, jealousy arose, wanting to destroy other people's lives entirely, which is why he repeatedly sent photos of harmed Kaere to Kyoriki. Of course, some also believe he simply saw little Kaere alone and found her an easy target. And that's it for today's case. Thanks for watching and see you in the next videos.